And I touched on this a hair earlier, and the fact that it's going to be like 2 or 3 weeks even before they start any kind of league business, because there's going to be attorneys involved. It's going to be pretty much sort of a paperwork mess for about 2 weeks. And I found this article that just came out from The Athletic, and I thought it was rather interesting because it's going to give people an insight into how big of a mess this is going to be even after they get this deal done. If they hope to start the season on time, the amount of things they are about to cluster into one group.
Her words hung in the air. The league, long plagued by chronic mismanagement, teeters on the edge of a full-blown meltdown, far beyond a routine CBA negotiation. This isn't just a contract dispute, it's a system on the brink of collapse, pushing its brightest stars to the very limits of their patience. The chaos, the sheer absurdity, is finally coming into focus, igniting a wave of frustration that could redefine careers and tarnish reputations. Brace yourself, the WNBA is hurtling toward its most intense reckoning.
Into one group is pretty wild, to be honest with you. And on top of it, this is a league that's been notorious for looking and feeling extremely disorganized over the years anyway. Some people might call it Bush League, right? We all know what that's Bush League. You know, I've said before, you've heard me say it. There's times where the WNBA feels very AA baseball-ish. All right. I don't even want to say AAA. I've seen, like, when it comes to television broadcast, forget about it.
Many have long criticized the WNBA's operational structure, often labeling it Bush League. This isn't exaggeration. At times, the league feels more like WA baseball than a professional sports organization. Broadcast quality, especially outside national telecasts, often lags even AAA baseball, exposing deep structural flaws. This perception of chaos intensifies the current crisis, making the looming CBA timeline feel nearly impossible for an organization already grappling with basic competence.
League. You know, I've said before, you've heard me say it. There's times where the WNBA feels very AA baseball-ish. All right. I don't even want to say AAA. I've seen, like, when it comes to television broadcasts, forget about it. There's AAA broadcasts that are better than most non-WNBA national telecasts there are on TV. And one could argue the NBA TV broadcasts aren't very good either. Let's get to this. March 10th, the drop dead date. This is the date an agreement would need to be reached.
Clock is ticking toward March 10th, not for a finalized deal, but just a handshake. On core terms, less than 2 weeks remain to tackle critical issues like revenue sharing, minimum housing standards, and roster construction rules. For a league infamous for sluggish decision-making and disorganization, this is an impossibly tight window. The pressure is crushing, and missing this preliminary deadline could spark a far bigger collapse, jeopardizing the future of every player in the league.
Let's get to this. March 10th, the drop dead date. This is the date an agreement would need to be reached, not the date the ink has to be dried on signatures. To get to work, this date gives both sides less than 2 weeks from today to come to an agreement on revenue sharing, housing, minimum standards, roster construction rules, all of the other priorities the league and the players have laid out throughout the CBA process. Once a term sheet is in place, lawyers from each side would get to work codifying the specifics of the agreement, and the owners and players.
Reason behind the seemingly arbitrary March 10th deadline is chillingly clear. Television. A broadcasting source revealed that securing early season game slots requires weeks of lead time. Without it, the league risks losing its airtime entirely. Losing TV exposure would be a devastating blow, instantly crippling the league and voiding any CBA deal. This frantic rush to lock in broadcast windows exposes a deeper fragility, highlighting just how precarious the WNBA's lifeline has become.
The March 10th date for television broadcast. Makes sense. If you lose your TV broadcast, you're cooked. The league is cooked. March 31st, a signed contract. Even with a handshake on March 10th, it would likely take about 3 weeks for the lawyers to get everything done and for an agreement to be signed. It's important to note that in the time between the handshake and the agreement, everything would remain in status quo and the moratorium would remain in place that would prohibit free agency transactions. Furthermore, franchises couldn't trade college draft picks, so no one should expect to.
If a handshake agreement miraculously happens by March 10th, the chaos won't end there. Lawyers on both sides would need roughly 3 weeks to translate the preliminary deal into a legally binding contract. This isn't just paperwork, it's a painstaking, time-consuming process that almost guarantees a bottleneck. The notion that everything could be resolved in such a compressed time frame is unrealistic, setting the stage for more delays and escalating tensions across the league.
Chip. The WNBA wants to avoid scheduling major attention-seeking events during college basketball's marquee weekend. So, in other words, they don't want to compete with the NC2A for news. Don't blame them. Because if you've seen those ratings on national TV, WNBA don't stand a chance, to be honest. April 6th, expansion draft. Toronto and Portland, you're on the clock. Finally. So we're talking 6 weeks from now before there would be an expansion draft.
Crucial 3 weeks between a handshake and a signed agreement. A complete moratorium would take effect. No free agency moves, no draft pick trades virtually, no league business could occur. Players and teams would be left powerless, watching critical opportunities slip away while lawyers deliberate. What's meant to prevent premature actions only magnifies the uncertainty, fueling anxiety across the entire WNBA landscape.
NC2A for news, don't blame them. Because if you've seen those ratings on national TV, WNBA don't stand a chance, to be honest. April 6th, expansion draft. Toronto and Portland, you're on the clock. Finally. So we're talking 6 weeks from now before there would be an expansion draft. April 7th through 11th, pre-agency. The pre-free agency period kicks off 12:01 Eastern on April 7th with a designation period.
This WNBA freeze with the NFL's notorious tampering period, where deals are often unofficially agreed upon before the official window opens. In the NFL and NBA, pre-free agency buzz is a spectacle that drives massive fan engagement. The WNBA, by contrast, faces a mandated silence. No news, no negotiations, nothing. This stark difference exposes the league's rigid, almost archaic process, leaving players and fans in the dark, while other leagues thrive on strategic predial maneuvering, underscoring the WNBA's ongoing organizational struggles.
I mean, in the NFL, they have what they call a tampering period. And honestly, the tampering period happens before the tampering period opens. Because as soon as the tampering period opens, you start finding out guys are signed. It's like the tampering period started 30 seconds ago and 7 guys have already signed with new teams. I will say this, it's a really interesting period for the NFL. And these other sports, I think the NBA does a pretty good job of it too. Make things very interesting. The college draft would be April 3rd.
The legal moratorium, the pre-free agency period, usually lasts 10 days, giving teams time to make designation offers to reserves and restricted free agents. Under this rushed timeline, that critical window could shrink to just 2 or 3 days. Front offices would be forced to make split-second decisions under immense pressure, recipe for mistakes, missed opportunities, and player frustration. Adding to the chaos, the WNBA has proposed eliminating the core designation, a vital tool for teams to retain unrestricted free agents. Even if it survives, teams will have barely any time to decide who to tag. This potential rule change injects another layer of uncertainty, turning free agency into a high-stakes gamble. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Over 100 players are set to hit free agency this year. More than 100 careers will hang in the balance, all competing for limited spots under an impossibly compressed and disorganized timeline. The sheer volume of talent, combined with lightning-fast decision-making, creates a bottleneck unlike anything the league has seen before.